and see what we can find. We're in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. What it looks like.
Stone River Battlefield.
Stone River Battlefield. There must be more to it than this.
National Park.
Yeah, we're coming to a sign here. Stone River National Battlefield Visitor Center. This away. So we'll go to the Visitor Center and see what we can find. This is the United States National Cemetery. And
I'll just take a little.
Like all the rest of them.
Get that?
Get what? Oh.
Stone National Cemetery. Established June 23rd, 1865. Union dead from this battlefield in Middle Tennessee are buried here. Of the more than 6,100 Union burials, 2,562 are known but to God. Men and women who gave their lives in other wars or who have served in the armed forces are also buried here. Okay?
This is a pyramid of cannonballs.
What that is? In memory.
And this is a cannon. Now, get around the other side, I can probably get a better shot of it. Because the sun is following back. Okay. Another cannon, I guess from the
the big old cannonballs.
Mm-hmm.
Should we go around and just get the graves?
No.
No?
I think we got enough. Well, they ain't no place else to. We're going into the visitor center and see what's in there.
Boulevard and then we follow it.
A divided America opposed each other here. The woods and fields are much as they were in late 1862. You may stand upon the same field from which the Federal Army set out on a march to the sea, a campaign which cut the Confederacy in two. Nothing in that relentless 2-year march could match the bloody beginning here at Stones River. Here, on December 31st, 1862, the Union Army of the Cumberland, under General William S. Rosecrans, and the Confederate Army of Tennessee, under General Braxton Bragg, lost nearly 1/3 of their men. It was the bloodiest single day of the war in all the land west of the Cumberland Mountains. Both sides claimed victory. Rosecrans' army was the best the Union had to offer. Commanded by West Point graduates, more than 43,000 men filled the ranks, but they had little experience in battle. Rosecrans' mission was clear: to drive a wedge in the Confederate rail supply lines through Tennessee and Georgia. He had little doubt that he could do this as he marched his men southeast from Nashville. His only obstacle was General Bragg's army, positioned somewhere north of Chattanooga, nearby, but its exact position unknown. Rosecrans' muddy blue columns pressed on despite lightning thrusts day after day by fighting Joe Wheeler's Confederate cavalrymen. A succession of heavy rains had drenched the fields and forests. Men dragged their feet like heavy clubs, weighted with mud of many fields and many miles. Rosecrans had divided his force into 3 at Nashville, each probing to find the Confederate line of battle. At last, they located it. Massive, and unmoving. It lay before them at Murfreesboro. For 2 days, General Braxton Bragg and his Confederate Army of Tennessee had waited the Union arrival. He had used his time well to position his troops for a great battle, his first important victory at the head of an army. They were prepared for the inevitable attack. The cavalry steadily fed messages to Bragg's headquarters, enabling him to follow every step of the approaching federal forces. He knew they had located his position and were turning toward him. On December 30th, 1862, the armies, equal in strength, faced each other. Both generals devised basically the same battle plan, to attack the right flank and cut off supplies. It is night. The troops go into bivouac. The rain has stopped, the sky filled with stars. On each side of the battle line, a band strikes up. Neither will be outdone. Each attempts to drown the other out. A sad and fearful prelude as the strings of Home Sweet Home, played in unison by both North and South, mirror the tragedy of father facing son, brother facing brother. General Rosecrans, Old Rosie as he is known among his men, goes over his battle plan with his corps commanders, Crittenden on the left flank, McCook on the right, and Thomas in the middle. Victory depends on all positions holding, above all McCook's. If all can hold, they can take advantage of a flaw, a bend at Stone's River. The Confederate line is lopped off there. General Crittenden will cross the river and cut through the thin reserve line to capture Murfreesboro and assault the enemy from behind. The battlefield is quiet. Thousands of dark forms have settled down to rest. They lie woven in sleep, fitful, momentarily distracted from the urgent business of war. The noise of some faraway activity drifts across from the Confederate camp. Dawn comes slowly to the woods and fields where McCook's troops lie. The pickets in front of the line hear the noise in the Confederate camp trail off into silence. It is not clear at first what this means. The pickets' gaze narrows. Only the dim shapes of wood and field are visible. They scan the pale lines of the fencing for some explanation. Disbelief enters their straining eyes. What appeared a dark landscape is now a monumental battle line, regiment on regiment, its dark flanks lost in the darkness of early morning. The pickets crouch, withholding their fire as the line comes near. The rattling of Confederate muskets shatters the Union sleep. The Union Army is caught completely by surprise. The Union troops had massed to attack the north end of the field, but Bragg strikes the south. By Bragg's plan, they would strike the south end of the Union front and swing the whole line back against the Nashville pike. Pressing onward, they would throw the enemy across the road and rail line, tearing them loose from that vital artery of supplies and ammunition. Once he gained the Nashville pike and the railroad tracks, Bragg would have the Union Army at his mercy. At this moment, General Rosecrans is watching General Crittenden's troops fording the silent waters of Stone's River and a shallow crossing known as McFadden's Ford. They will assemble for the march toward Murfreesboro. In this quiet bend of the stream, all is running smoothly. Rosecrans has no suspicion that 3 miles south, his forces have already lost much ground. A messenger from McCook arrives, breaks into the group and hands the commanding general a hastily scribbled note. McCook's lines have broken at the south end of the field. The rampaging Confederates are advancing at will. Rosecrans cancels the attack on Murfreesboro as McCook's desperate situation demands all his attention. He mounts his horse and moves down the line, gathering reserves, sending them toward the surging Confederate assault. The growing ranks have risen like a merciless sea, piling upon the line. And now, as the attack reaches a blinding climax, the Union line breaks. Southerners pour through. The flood of battle carries on into the woods and fields until the Confederate front comes to a grinding halt, and the field is locked in immobility. No man moves in the winter sun's glare. They stand sweating in the chilled morning air. The dead lie before them. The agony of battle and exhaustion grips each soldier. Tears stream down their cheeks. It is just after 9 o'clock. The Union front is only half as long as it was at daybreak. Piece after piece has been beaten into retreat until only a fragment of McCook's corps remains, a hard knot of fighting men commanded by Phil Sheridan. His wounded force watches the cordons of gray infantry drawn about them. Ammunition is low. The place will be known as the slaughter pen. The battle begins again. First, the artillery duel. The crash of shells through the timber, the terrifying whinny of horses. Then, the Confederate assault. The charge is beaten back, but it returns, redoubled in might. The Confederate force has all but surrounded the Federals. The Southerners are in the woods with them. The Union force must fight against total annihilation. Blood splashes the tangled thickets. Sunlight glints from deadly sabers. All over the woods, Union men are reaching for the last round. They ram it down the rifle's long bore, fire the charge at some nearby shape, and the gun becomes a club. Sheridan's need for reserves is desperate. But the movement of fresh troops of General Crittenden has come to a halt a mile behind them in open fields along the Nashville Pike. The fields are decked out with the apparatus of artillery. The horses neatly posed, the limbers detached, the cannon wheeled to face the enemy. All of Crittenden's men take their places to hold this new and yet untested line of battle until Sheridan gives way, as they know he must, letting the ponderous Confederate attack break through upon them. Handfuls of men in blue trickle from the slaughter pen across the open fields. Soon, a rabble of Union troops is flushed from the woods by the attack. The softened masses of Federal infantry collect about the fresh troops posted along the pike. Here, the front hardens, and the ground shakes under the artillery bombardment. The delaying action by Sheridan was not in vain. Southern regiments move across the fields as Union fire dents their lines. Near the Wilkerson Pike, Confederates overrun a field hospital, with Union surgeons now held prisoner, treating the Southern wounded. Smoke billows as Union men furiously lay down volley after volley into the misty wall ahead. The wind drifts the smoke from the fields. The Confederate attack has been halted. It is nearly noon. Now, neither side gives way. The two fronts struggle against each other, working themselves into exhaustion. The Union Army holds on, stretching its length 2 miles up the pike toward approaching trains of supply, toward Nashville, where safety lies in retreat. The Federal line ends just short of Stone's River. Here stand the Union troops of Colonel Hazen. The Confederates cannot swing around this end of the line, for the narrow space between Hazen and the river is covered by artillery. Only direct assaults are possible, and Hazen has been warding these off since the battle began. This is the only part of the Union line which has resisted attack. Bragg now realizes he must dislodge Hazen if he is to throw the Union forces still further into retreat. He draws fresh troops from the reserve force beyond the river. General Breckinridge brings them across the stream, and by 2 o'clock has them assembled, ready to attack. They move off in perfect formation to pass through the various stages of attack. As they come into view of the woods where Hazen waits, a cannonade storms across the field and destroys whole sections of their line. They are too far away yet to effectively return the fire. As they march nearer, Federal cannon change their ammunition and send hailstorms of canister through their lines. Confederate ranks thin with every step. Valor alone moves them on. At last, they are within musket range of the Union troops. A handful of men in gray approach the edge of the woods. Hazen's infantry discharges a sheet of rifle fire that sweeps them back. He has drawn assistance from the forces around him, cramming his position with troops and artillery, and with it has shattered this friendly attack against him. There is a pause now as the wounded are given relief and the dead removed. Officers collect in groups to discuss the situation. Smoke still clings to the woods, but a silence has fallen in which sounds of attack farther down the line can be heard clearly. The day is not finished for Hazen. Late in the afternoon, Breckenridge refills the field before him with bristling bayonets, and again tries crossing that costly wasteland. Again, the Union cannon crumple the ranks of the men in gray. The Confederates fight on in desperation. Finally, the sun is set, and quiet darkness draws over the wounded. The Union Army clings to the low rise of ground controlling the road and rail line to Nashville, the thread of life. At the close of the bloody day, both armies are exhausted. Bragg, certain the Union forces will retreat and that his first great victory is at hand, telegraphs Richmond, "God has granted us a happy new year."
This is the stuff that's in the battlefield here. We drive along slow. This is tour stop number 1, but this is the cannons mostly. I'm going to try to get this, but it says Michigan.
The state of Michigan has erected this mark to her brave and courageous sons who fought at Stone River to preserve the Union.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see what this says on December 31st.
Okay, here's another part of the battlefield.
The Union cannons.
The Union cannons. And that, where that train is there, was a track there at that time, and that's the one they cut to keep the supplies from coming in. The entrance to the battlefield of Stone River, and I'm just going to pan across to give you some idea. We've already been through there, and it's a national park. I'm going to pan around, go across the road, because that's where the cemetery is. This stone fence is the cemetery that we took earlier on the tour. And the sun's going to get me, so that takes care of that.
This marker just shows the state of Tennessee in the middle of the storm, and this is the geographic center of the state. It's been under the jurisdiction of England, Ohio District of North Carolina, the state of territory of south of the River Ohio, and the state of Tennessee. Okay, we are in Murfreesboro,